Hello, how are you? It's nice to see you. It's been a sunny Sunday. That's exciting. Good to get out and be in the sun. And it wasn't freezing. It was like 12 degrees at one point. Maybe, touch wood, winter is disappearing. Right, exciting today because we finished Odd. I loved that. That was a great book. Gaiman, absolute genius. We're going to read another book that's supposed to be fantastic. So I'm quite excited about this one. It is called Orphans of the Tide by Struan Murray. He's Scottish. And it's supposed to be great. My daughter is 92 pages in and is loving it. And she's pretty hard to please. So let's see. Right, new book. Can't judge it by the cover, but we can get a wee insight into it from the blurb. Yeah. The city was built on a sharp fountain that jutted in probably from the sea, and the sea kept trying to claim it back. That grey morning, once the tide had receded, a whale was found on a rooftop. When a mysterious boy washes in with the tide, the citizens believe he's the enemy, the god who drowned the world, come again to cause untold chaos. Only Ellie, a fearless young inventor living in a workshop crammed with curiosities, believes he's innocent. But the enemy can take possession of any human body, and the ruthless Inquisition are determined to destroy it forever. To save the boy, Ellie must prove who he really is, even if that means revealing her own dangerous secret. What's Ellie's secret? And who is the boy? And why did the whale end up in the mountain? Not on the mountain, on the rooftop. Sounds pretty good to me. So on the cover, it says gripping, enthralling, unputdownable. I did. Tirelessly inventive. In the last city in the world, anyone can be the enemy. And Jinx, here's high praise indeed. Singularly brilliant. Our expectations are high. It begins with a map. I love books with maps. Don't know how well you can see that there, but it's a map of the city. I think we'll come back to that. I quite often, if there's a map or in some of the bigger books, lists of characters, which comes in really handy, authors. If you're going to have lots and lots and lots of characters, then maybe a list of characters at the start is quite helpful for forgetful folk. So I've turned the page down there, so I know how to get back to it quickly. And this was written for Rudy, Robbie, and Nona. Chapter 1. Its last song. I'm predicting, you know how whales sing? That's what they say, whale song. I think this would make a bit of a whale, but based on the back of the book as well, isn't it? Anyway, a good prediction gets us thinking about what's going to happen. It's a good way to read. The city was built on a sharp mountain that jutted improbably from the sea, and the sea kept trying to claim it back. When the tide rose, it swallowed up the city's lower streets. When the tide fell, it spat them back out again, but left its mark. Fresh mussels clung to windowsills. Fish flailed on the cobblestones. That grey morning, once the tide had receded, a whale was found on a rooftop. A crowd gathered along the top of the sea wall to gape at the roof below. "It's an evil omen," yelled the old preacher, his breath steaming in the air. "The enemy didn't do this," snorted a sailor. "It must have got stuck there at high tide." "It's dead," said a merchant. "Do you think we could sell it for meat?" The whale lay on its belly, stretched from one end of the roof to the other. It had beached itself on the chapel of St. Bartholomew, whose rooftop poked above the waves at low tide. 4 stone gargoyles stood at each corner, 2 of them digging sharply into the whale's skin. Hungry seagulls screeched overhead. The crowd were so engrossed that none of them noticed the girl's arrival. She had tired eyes and tangled, dirty blonde hair, mussed up from a night of broken sleep. She leaned over the sea wall and bit her lip. "It's too big to be out of the water," she said, speaking more to herself than anyone else. "It'll have crushed its lungs just by lying there." A tiny wide-eyed boy next to her looked up in horror. He nestled close to his mother's side, watching the girl warily. Her face was pale, with 3 red scratches down one cheek, and she smelled faintly of fireworks. Intriguing. What was worse, she was dressed like a man, and not an upstanding one either. She wore a frayed crimson scarf and a coat that was long and hooded, stitched together from weathered cloth and grey sealskin. Who are you?" said the boy, his lips quivering. "I'm Ellie," said the girl distractedly, rummaging in her coat pockets. She pulled out a magnifying glass, an onion, and finally a penknife with a razor-sharp edge. The boy reached for his mother's hand. "If we don't cut this whale open soon," said Ellie, holding up the knife, "it will explode." The boy began to cry. "Watch your mouth, girl," said his mother. "No, it really will," said Ellie, raising her hands. "Dead whales start to decay from the inside. There will be a dangerous build-up of gas." There is probably a joke there, isn't there, about a dangerous build-up of gas. We're not crack it, though. The mother turned away, covering her mouth with the back of her hand. "I know," said Ellie. "There'll be guts everywhere, and you wouldn't believe the smell." She added, staring down at a penknife. "On second thoughts." Ellie turned to a second girl standing behind her. She looked to be the same age, 12 or 13 maybe, with a mess of curly ginger hair. She wore a huge woolen blue jumper, heavy black boots, and a bored expression. 13 then. "Anna, I need you to run back to the workshop and get my flensing tool," said Ellie. "What's a flensing tool?" said Anna, yawning. "Good question." "It's a sharp blade at the end of a long pole," said Ellie. "It's in the loft beside the bookcases, hanging below a telescope and a rifle." "You have a rifle?" said Anna, leaning forward, suddenly interested. "And bullets?" "Just hurry, all right," said Ellie, and Anna rolled her eyes and slouched off up the street. Ellie hopped onto the sea wall, then dropped down the other side. The crowd gasped as she landed on the roof of her chapel 10 feet below. Of the chapel 10 feet below, it's not hers. Will be mistakes. Ellie held out her hands to steady herself, stepping along the rooftop like a tightrope walker. The whale's eyes were closed, eyelids wrinkled and creased like those of an old man. Like that. She knelt, drawing one hand delicately along the whale's side. The skin was hard, covered in white barnacles and crisscrosses of scar tissue. "What's going on here?" said a voice above. Ellie glanced up and saw a young city guardsman nudging his way through the crowd, gawky and big-eared, dressed in a black cap and dark blue greatcoat. "There's a whale on the roof," said a woman. "The girl's gone down to it," said another. "What?" said the guardsman. Then he looked down and noticed Ellie on the roof. "What's she doing?" He clapped his hands to his head. "Watch out, miss! That whale will eat you!" "Whales don't eat people," Ellie sighed. No one heard. They were all talking over each other now. The whale's massive body rose and fell beneath her hand as it drew a ragged breath. It was still alive. Ellie looked around, wondering if it was possible to get the whale back in the water. A ship might have been able to pull it free when the tide came back in, but that was hours away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I wish I could help." As she spoke, Ellie thought she heard something faint coming from inside the whale. The clamour of the crowd made it impossible to be sure. "Get away from it!" the guardsman yelled, though he seemed too afraid to climb down to the roof himself. "I think you should drag her off. Someone call the Inquisition." "Please, I'm trying to listen," said Ellie. The preacher said whales could breathe fire." Please, Ellie yelled, but no one paid her any attention. She pushed a marble-sized device from her. She pulled a marble-sized device from her pocket, wrapped in yellow paper. With a flick of her wrist, she hurled it up at the sea wall. There was a crack and a flash of light and a riot of frenzied screeching as the seagulls fled. The crowd staggered back and shielded their eyes, shocked into silence. Ellie held up her hand. Listen, she said. So they all did. And in the silence, they could hear it drifting towards them. It was the wheel. The wheel was singing. I think that's where we'll stop it today. So, my enthusiasm is I like Ellie already. She's a wee bit quirky. I think she's a pretty intelligent kid who's trying her best to make sense of stuff. I think that's pretty cool. I'm puzzled by the kind of layout of the city. The sea wall seems to be above houses, so that must mean. Well, I don't know what that must mean. That's why I'm puzzled about it. I'll need to think about that. That's what your brain does. Just kind of floats stuff about and constantly pondering things. If you let it. And connections. I could almost smell the sea from that book there, that chapter there. I love mussels. I love eating mussels. So in my head, I'm in Fife. There you go. That's my connection. Or even better still, Donegal. That's where my dad lives, and he's just next to a big sea loch. You get the smell of the sea every morning. It's fantastic. So that's my connection. I wonder what happens. I wonder what the song, the whales singing. I hope it's a good one. Hope you have a good day, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.